as Jason said, my name is Gustavo Modena, and Andrew and I will be presenting this session where we're gonna cover. We're gonna be talking about, updating your DRS from between different versions, and what are some of the common pitfalls and how to avoid them. And for this session today, we have this agenda. So in order to set the context, we're going to be talking about the Azure WAF overview, understanding what is Azure WAF, what are the rule sets, some of the differences that we've seen with the latest versions, and then we're going to cover the process of upgrading the rule sets. So we're going to talk about the common pitfalls, best practice, and then Andrew will be doing a live demo in the second part of this workshop today, this webinar, and then we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. If you have any questions, throughout this public webinar, please feel free to publish these questions in the chat. We have, our team members here, so they can help answering your questions and sharing links as we go through. Can everybody see my screen? Just want to make sure it's working fine. Thank you. All right, so let's start with the Azure WAF overview, right? Before we really talk about what is Azure WAF, it's important to understand different kinds of attacks that we are constantly seeing, right? So we classified here, and we're gonna cover 3 types of attacks, being the first one, the DDoS attack, which is a distributed denial of service. And this kind of attacks is aimed to overwhelm network applications in different layers, from layer 3, layer 4, and layer 7. The layer 7, also known as the application layer attacks, right? And then in Azure, we have, we can use Azure DDoS along with Azure WAF to have a protection from layer 3, layer 4, and layer 7. Azure DDoS protection will be protecting against all these attacks on layer 3 and layer 4, and then Azure WAF will be protecting all the attacks on the layer 7 on the application side. These DDoS attacks, when we talk about them, we can think about TCP floods, which involves sending a large number of TCP connection requests to exhaust resources on the network or target server. And then when we talk about layer 7 attacks or application attacks, we can think about HTTP or HTTPS flood attacks, which is also a high volume of HTTP and HTTP requests to overwhelm your web server specifically, right? Disrupting its normal functioning and making it unavailable for legitimate users, right? So the second type of attack we have here are the web application attacks. And within this, this group of attacks, we have different kind of attacks, like, for example, SQL injections, cross-site scripting, remote file execution, and others. And these are like attacks targeting directly your application in order to try to get some, information from databases, or trying to run scripts, by using cross-site scripts, or even sending remote files, and these remote files leading to code execution or something like that. These web attacks are, we can think about these attacks based on the OWASP top 10, right? The OWASP top 10 includes all of these attacks that I mentioned and some other attacks. So these are the web application attacks. And then last but not least, we have here the malicious bots. These are like automated program script data. They are performing credential stuffing, probing for vulnerabilities. They can cause like financial loss and also competitive disadvantage, and in some cases even legal challenges. In Azure WAF, we're gonna see it in more details in the next few slides. we do have a rule set for that that's designed to detect and block such malicious activities, protecting your applications from any kind of bot exploitation, right? And within these malicious bots group kind of attacks, we have DOS bots, that can perform some kind of denial of service attacks. We also have content scraper, that are bots that scrape content from websites to use it elsewhere. And then we also have price scraper, that are bots that scrape price information from competitor websites. Okay, so now that we know the 3 different types of attacks, let's dive into the Azure Web Application Firewall. So this is our cloud-native service to protect web applications from the web hacking techniques such as SQL injection and others, right? This service can be deployed in Azure within minutes. And the deployment of the Azure WAF is along with 2 different products. The first one is with the Azure Front Door, which is more like a global solution. So if you have your web applications running across different regions, and then you have clients connecting from different locations, then having the front door with WAF might be the best solution for you, because then you use Microsoft Network to distribute, to allow clients to connect to the closest locations, and then have a good performance or very low latency to connect to your applications everywhere. And then we can also have the WAF with the application gateway. That is more like a Azure regional WAF approach, where let's say you only have your applications deployed in one specific region and your clients are coming from that specific region. So you don't want to use a global topology. You don't want to use anything like that. So you may just want to have application gateway WAF, right? What are the advantages of using, Azure WAF? Azure WAF is as I said, is integrated with these 2 products. It is highly available, right? So you don't have to deploy new VMs by yourself and do any kind of updates on the VMs or even configure a new solution every time you need a new instance running, right? So what happens here is that when you configure the Azure WAF, either using front door or application gateway, your solution will be high scalable, right? And not only high scalable, but also high available, right? To make sure you have the best performance and the capacity to handle all user requests. You can protect your applications running on Azure, or you can even use your Azure WAF to protect applications running elsewhere. If you do have some kind of hybrid connectivity, where between Azure and let's say on premises, or between Azure and any other cloud, but you want to use Azure WAF to protect your web applications, you can do that. We do have a blog in our tech community that shows a scenario where we are using Azure WAF to protect an application running in a third-party cloud. So just an example, right? Of course, it relies on low latency and hybrid connectivity, so you don't have very poor performance when navigating from one cloud to another or from different regions. The other advantage here for the Azure WAF is that completely auto-managed by Microsoft. So again, all the updates are going to be handled by Microsoft. Not only the updates of the engine itself, but also the updates on the rule sets, updates against new attack vectors, new threats, and all of that. So every time Microsoft is constantly working on creating updates on improving the product. So every time there is a new feature, these new features are released, it's going to be roll out to your WAF automatically. You don't need to make a lot of changes. Of course, you still need to make some changes, like from one version of the rule set to another, like opting in to use the new feature, but you don't need to run an installer by yourself, by your team. So it's completely handled by Microsoft, so you don't have to do that. And I think the other important thing here is that Azure WAF is enterprise compliance standard. So supports different compliance standards, like for example PCI and DSS. And that's really big, because a lot of customers, when they want to adopt a solution, security solution, they want to make sure that these solutions are compliant to different standards, depending on the industry these customers are. All right, so let's go to the next one and just do like a quick recap of the features. As I mentioned, the Azure WAF is to protect against the most common web attacks. So it's pre-configured to use the OWASP top 10. And again, the OWASP top 10 covering some attacks like cross-site scripting, path traversal, and command injection, and some others, right? It does have malicious botnets, so it protects against brute force attacks, credential stuffing, things like that. We can do rate limiting and control the number of requests, allowing from specific IP addresses during specific time duration. We can use custom rules, and that's a big thing here, because custom rules allow us to create different types of rules, like for example, geo-filtering, IP restrictions, HTTP parameter filtering, and also size restriction. We do have JavaScript challenge configuration, but yeah, like custom rules is a big thing, because every time you need, every customer has different applications running. Each application may have their, specific configurations and characteristics, and sometimes we're going to see, not sometimes, a lot of times we do see false positives, which means a WAF solution blocking legitimate connections or requests coming from users that should not be blocked, right? So custom rules is one of the things that we can use here to auto-tune our WAF and make it work as best as possible, and not block the legitimate requests coming from users, and only block what's really malicious to the environment, right? Another thing here, which is really important these days, is the integration with logs and metrics. So you do have visibility of a lot of different metrics on your WAF. Like, for example, you can see things like number of requests being blocked or not. You can also use these logs to integrate with like SIEM or Microsoft Sentinel, right? You can use these to integrate with some third-party solutions if you want to do that. And all these log analytics will help you to troubleshoot and understand some of the patterns of the traffic you're seeing in your network, right? You can even use these logs to deploy the workbooks and have a better visibility of what's going on. And recently we had the announcement of the public preview of the integration with Security Copilot, if you're thinking about AI. So these logs are also used by the integration with Security Copilot to give you a better way to track and understand what kind of threats are going through your WAF. And it's really easy to manage, configure, and everything else. If you are the kind of person that uses the portal, you can do everything from the portal. If you are the kind of person that uses CI/CD, like Terraform or PowerShell scripts or CLI, whatever, you can use. We do have integration. We can do a lot of configuration through APIs, PowerShell, CLI, and Terraform. Okay, so let's talk about the WAF Managed Rulesets. And to begin with, I would like to talk about the default ruleset, the DRS 2.1. That's our latest version available for both Application Gateway and Front Door WAF. So it's all based on the OWASP CRS 3.3.2. For those who might not be familiar, OWASP CRS is a set of generic attack detection rules for web applications. It's like having a comprehensive security checklist that's constantly being updated to address new vulnerabilities and threats, right? In addition to the OWASP rules, the DRS also includes additional proprietary rules from the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Collection, or the MYSTIC team, and this provides increased coverage patches for specific vulnerabilities and better false positive reduction. By default, if you are using default rule set 2.0 or 2.1, it's already using the anomaly scoring. I'm not going to talk about anomaly scoring right now. I do have something more specific about that in a few more slides, but that's it. But yeah, the most important thing to keep in mind here is that the DRS 2.0, 2.1, it includes not only rules that are based on the OWASP CRS 3.3.2, but also rules that are created by the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Collection, the MYSTIC team. So we're going to see that there are some replacements that are made here in order to make these rule set better and decrease the number of false positives. So the MYSTIC, or the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center rules, they are all written in partnership with the Microsoft Intelligence team, providing increased coverage patches for specific vulnerabilities and, again, better false positive reduction, right? There are some replacements here. So like, for example, the rule ID 942.440, which is the SQL command sequence detected, is disabled and it's replaced by the MYSTIC rule 990.31.002. And there are some other that are replaced, like, for example, 942.110, also related to SQL injection, which is replaced by the MYSTIC rule 9903.1001, and some others. We do have a pretty good documentation on this link at the bottom of the slide, where you can see what are the rules being disabled and what's replacing them with the rules written by the MYSTIC team. And when it comes to the rules written by the MYSTIC team, we do have some MYSTIC rule groups that you're going to find when navigating through the managed rules, right? So we have 4 specific groups. They are easily identifiable by MS Threat Intel, and then you're going to see AppSec, SQLi, Web Shells, and CVEs, right? So again, if you want to learn more in the details, what's being added rule by rule, I do recommend you taking a look at this documentation here. Not only what's new, but what's being disabled from the DRS and what's being replaced by MYSTIC rules written by the MYSTIC team. Okay, so then yeah, here the anomaly scoring, right? So by default, as I said, the DRS versions 2.0 and above, the latest one being the 2.1, uses anomaly scoring, right? So when a request matches a rule, what would happen in the past is that request matching a rule would be automatically blocked, right? So the traffic matches, that was before the anomaly score. With the anomaly score, when a traffic that matches any rule is immediately blocked. So even when your WAF is in prevention mode, what's going to happen is that instead of the OWASP sets to, the OWASP will, it has some definitions based on the severity for each rule. Those severities from critical, which is 5, through notice, which is 2. And then the severity affects the number value for the request. So which we are calling anomaly score, right? If a single request accumulates an anomaly score of 5 or higher than that, the WAF takes action on the request. This is allowing, the WAF to make more informed decisions and helps reduce the changes of false positives. So again, that's available from the DRS 2.0 to the 2.1. So that's a big thing for, customers that might be having a lot of, requests hitting the lower score like notice and warning, and previously they were just being blocked right away. With the anomaly score, it's not going to happen, so you can take advantage of that too. The traditional detection mode, which is what we had before the DRS 2.0. So, in the application gateway 3.1 below, Azure front door, DRS 1.1 below, there was no intelligence shared between the rules. Each rule had, no correlation with any previous rule matches. So it was independent, right? Once it hit a specific rule, it would be, the WAF would be taking an action and block the request. All right, then let's talk a little bit about the Bot Manager Ruleset. This one is powered by the Microsoft Threat Intelligence feed. This bot mitigation ruleset list of known bad IP addresses updates multiple times per day. So we do have a lot of updates happening here, not only once a day, it happens multiple times a day, depending on the score of the bots and all of that. And all of these updates come from the Microsoft Threat Intelligence feed. We do have 3 different groups for bots in this bot manager rule set. The first one being bad bots to protect against bots that are classified as bad, then good bots. So we are able to identify what are the good bots that will not cause any kind of damage or not trying to steal information from your website or applications, nothing like that. And we also have unknown bots. So that are, let's say, new bots that are being identified. We still don't know if they're good or bad. So unknown bots is the third group that we have here. We do have options to change the actions between allow, log, and block. And the latest version of the bot manager rule set that we have is the 1.1. We previously had one, the initial one was the 1.0. We are currently in the 1.1. Okay, so for good bots, right, we do have some new rules that have been added here in the 1.1. So for good bots, being the rules 200, 300 to 200, 700, it's improving the SEO ranking due to good bots crawling websites and reducing false positives seen by customers. And then in the bad bots, we do have a new rule, which is the 100, 300. And has some improvements on scraping websites and spreading disinformation, executing target phishing attacks and social engineering attacks. Also spamming customer websites with form submission pages, manipulating ranking of content tooling websites, analytic pages, and launching denial of inventory attacks. So these are some of the updates that we had with the Bot Manager 1.1. Again, we do have 2 different rule sets for the Bot Manager. The first one was the 1.0, and the 1.1 brings these new rules that I just mentioned here. But yeah, in the portal, you can also see what are the different rules that we have there for these this new bot manager rule set. Okay, so let's talk about upgrading WAF rules. And I think that a lot of the pitfalls and best practices that we're going to talk about here, they're not only related to WAF itself, but to any kind of changes that we can that we want or need to make in our environments, right? So let's start with the upgrading WAF rules. Why is it so important, right? First of all, it helps with the expanded coverage. So new rule sets include additional protections for emerging vulnerabilities. So every time we do have a new rule set, we do recommend customers to upgrade them. That's like, I would say it's pretty much like applying updates to your operating system and your laptops, computers, and all of that, right? Every day we do have new cyber threats. Yeah, these cyber threats evolve rapidly, so every day we have something new happening, and making sure that you have the latest version running helps you expand this coverage. The other reason why is the reduced false positives. So updated rule sets help improving the accuracy, minimizing false positives, and it ensures legitimate traffic isn't blocked unnecessarily. And again, staying ahead of threats. All these threats are evolving really, really fast, and your defenses must keep pace, right? So do regular updates, ensure your WAF protection and is able to defend against the latest attack vectors. So that's the why. These are some of the pitfalls, right? So lack of testing. A lot of customers, we see they don't really test how the new versions will behave in their with their applications, with their environments. So we do not recommend making any kind of updates directly in production environment for many different reasons, right? First one is, even though the newest versions are intended to reduce false positives and be a better solution for the customer, we don't know every single application that's running. We don't know if these applications have specific requirements that needs to be taken in consideration before making these upgrades. So it is highly recommendable that you test these new versions in non-production environments before deploying them. Next one, overlooking exclusions and custom rules. Failing to reconfigure custom rules and exclusions after an upgrade can result in legitimate traffic being blocked. A lot of customers do use exclusions and custom rules to auto-tune Azure WAF in order to have their applications running smoothly without any issues or legitimate traffic being blocked. When they do upgrade to newest version, they forget of reviewing those, and by forgetting it, you can just cause a lot of issues to your application. So start with the non-production environment, make sure you are testing and that you are applying the same exclusions you have, documented, and then you test those to make sure they are still valid. Do not skip any kind of backup or rollback plans. That's really, really, really important here. Not having these in place may cost you a few more time, or quite some time unavailable, and your users complaining. Sometimes you can even lose money with that. With that, right? Lack of documentation. It's really important to document everything that you have configured. Today, it's kind of simple to get these the documentation of what's configured, right? You can export the JSON of the templates of your resources, so you're going to be able to see all the configurations and custom rules and exclusions that are created easily, right? So do not forget to create a documentation every single time you're going to do some kind of change in your environment. Of course, here we are talking about doing these upgrades from one version to another, but it's important to keep this documentation up to date every time a new change is made or a new configuration is done in your environment. Not having the monitoring and logging, or not enabling them properly, configuring monitoring, not having these logs available can be, can make it very difficult to identify or troubleshoot issues when they happen, when, that kind of situations arise after the upgrade. Again, here we are focusing on the upgrades, but every time, right? Logs and monitoring are important to help you troubleshoot and understand what's going on every single time. And the last one here is the lack of review. So apply updates without reviewing changes. Always review changes in the new rule set versions and assess their impact. Take a look at the documentation. Make sure you understand what's being added. Like, for example, I mentioned that with the Mystic rules, some of the default rules are just disabled, and then some other rules are, replacing them. So make sure you do know what these new versions contain and do your assessment, get to know if any of those may or may not affect your applications before running them. Of course, doing all of that in non-production is always helpful because then you can have a better understanding of what's gonna, what the upgrade will cause. Okay, so now that we talk about the common pitfalls, what are the best practices? So first of all, document your current WAF configuration. Here we have a screenshot of some, templates of the WAF rules that we have. I'm not going through all the steps here because Andrew will be covering these in our live demo. So this is just to show you that here we have two screenshots and we can just make the changes by documenting or making the changes using templates here. So first of all, document your current WAF configuration before any change. So if you need to go back to that, you have the template, you know exactly what are the values you need to change back. Prepare a new template. So even if you are not using templates, if you are just using Azure Portal, there are a few things here that using templates is the best solution. You have a better visibility, and you're gonna understand a little bit better why in our demo. But yeah, start thinking about using template, and when you're gonna make these changes, prepare a new template. Don't do the changes directly on the template you already have. Again, testing non-production environment. Please don't do these changes directly in your production environments. It may cause, issues to you. It may cause issues to your customers, and they may not be happy after that, right? Make sure to reassign exclusions and customizations when you do the upgrades. Not all customizations you have in place may be applicable to the newer version. So you need to evaluate and reassign the ones that are applicable, right? And why is that? Because again, let's say, for example, you have an exclusion or a customization that will affect one specific rule ID. But then in the new rule set, the new rule ID is being disabled and replaced by another one. So you need to make sure that, you need to make sure to reassign your exclusions, but you also need to make sure that you're not, reassigning exclusions or customizations that are not applicable to the new DRS. And then run tests. Again, run over and over tests just to make sure that everything runs smoothly and your application, running in production will not be affected when you make this final change, right? We do have a blog post in the tech community with these best practices, and you can see a little bit more details about it. But yeah, I would say that's a good reading. I recommend you guys doing that. But yeah, I'll pass it over to Andrew so he can cover the live demo and we can learn more about this process of doing the upgrades. Andrew, floor is yours.
Thank you, Gustavo. That was a great overview. So I'll take over the screen sharing. Please let me know if you're able to see my screen and if I'm also audible enough.
I can see it, and you sound good.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So that was a great overview by Gustavo about Azure WAF and then the do's and the don'ts for upgrading your WAF rule set. So in this section, we're going to go through a demo just to see what we are discussing about how you can safely upgrade your WAF rule set to ensure that your application is protected. That's very important when it comes to the new rule set, which has more expanded coverage. And then, of course, to do it in a way that will not affect your application performance, that will not bring downtime. So to start us off for this demo, I'll just show you an overview of how our environment looks like. So on this page, you can see I'm inside an application gateway. And my application gateway has a web application firewall attached to it. And we are protecting or we are accessing a simple static web application. So if I click on this other tab, this is our test static web app 1, and this is behind the application gateway with WAF that we saw. Now within this application gateway, like I mentioned, we have a web application firewall policy, and this is how it looks like. So for this web application firewall policy, I'll just quickly go us through what has been configured. We can see we're in prevention mode. We also have our policy settings set up. We are enforcing request body inspection. We have a maximum request body limit, maximum file upload limit. Also of importance is our managed rules, which are offering protection. Here we can see the rule set for the Microsoft Bot Manager rule set. This is 1.0, and we have OWASP 3.2. So this, as we know, as also Gustavo mentioned, these are not the latest rule sets. The latest rule set is DRS 2.1. That's for OWASP, and we have the Microsoft Bot Manager 1.1. So basically what this means is these rule sets are one version lower, and we actually want now to upgrade them to go to the latest rule set. Just also to show you what else has been configured, we have two exclusions. The first one, this is at the global level, and we have the second exclusion, and this is at the rule level. So we've added these exclusions, and basically we're also going to show you what happens when you upgrade your WAF policy so that you don't lose your custom exclusion, the one running at the rule level. In addition to this, we have several custom rules configured, 3 of them, and we also have sensitive data protection. This is to ensure log scrubbing, that we enforce where we don't want to expose sensitive fields or fields we want hidden within our logs. Also, something else to take note of within our managed rules, in addition to the exclusions, we also have done some bit of customization. So when we go to this bot manager rule set 1.0, for the last rule set here, for the last rule, the other bots, our action is JavaScript challenge. So this might be, this is trying to mirror a real world scenario where maybe you've changed rule actions, either on the bot manager rule set or also on the OWASP or DRS rule set. So if I scroll down here, you can see all these rule sets, all these rules rather are in anomaly score. So that's the action. And then we have this particular rule, the 942.140, whose action we've changed to log. So these are some of the customizations that you can do on the rules within the rule set by changing the actions. And now when we do an upgrade on this directly from the portal, and this is something to note, is that these customizations are going to get lost. So for example, if I was to update this rule set to the latest one, 1.1, we no longer have the JS challenge. And if I do likewise for the OWASP, particularly for the action that had changed this for the 942.140, let me just scroll up to it here, this will revert to the default. So that's something important to note, and something that we also emphasize, that when you do an upgrade within the portal, you'll still retain your custom rules, your sensitive data, but you will lose any customizations or any changes that you had made. So as we had mentioned, we do have best practices, and this is also documented in the blog that had been done, that had been shared within the presentation. So the first thing to do that's extremely important is, of course, to start by documenting and also by taking a backup. These go hand in hand. So you are able to export this rule set, you're able to do it through the export template. You can see it down here. So in my case, if I click on export template, it's going to generate for me a new template. You can see it's already starting the generation. I'd already done this prior to this call. So once it's generated, you are able to actually select the template and be able to download it and keep it for safekeeping. So that forms part of the documentation and also for backup purposes. So in the event that you do want to maybe restore to the previous state, you can easily be able to do so. So for example, if I go to my Visual Studio, you can see this is actually the template that I had downloaded earlier, and we'll see where it comes into play. Especially for restoring where we have customizations for exclusions. So I've taken a backup. So I've taken also documented this. So the next step that I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how we're going to upgrade this through the Azure portal. So when I go to my managed rules, we've taken note of exclusions, we've taken note of the customizations we've done for our rule set. It's very straightforward. All we need to do is click on assign. So once I go to assign, you can see I'm on OWASP 3.2. I want to change this to our latest rule set, default rule set 2.1, and the same for the bot management rule set. I want us to use bot manager 1.1, which comes with more rules. So I'll just select those two and then click on save. Remember at this point, I've already taken my backup, which I've stored somewhere safely. So I'm going to click on save. Then you're going to see what is going to happen. So this shouldn't take too long. You're just going to monitor it for a couple of moments. Then you should see the change being applied. And then something to note, like we've discussed, you can see there's a warning here, notification that says changing or removing the rule set will also remove the exclusions and overrides from the previously assigned rule set. So this is extremely important to take note of as we are doing this particular exercise. So let this run for a couple of more moments. We can see the updating WAF policy is ongoing. So as this continues, what I'm going to show you is the template method. So like I've mentioned, once this update is done and we see the change to the new rule set, what it means, you've lost your customizations and it's actually just completed. So you can see now you're on bot manager rule set 1.1. And we can also see we're on default rule set 2.1. If you remember, I had noted that we had changed this rule set action for other bots to JavaScript challenge. So you can see that customization has gone. And the same applies to the rule that you had changed to log. That's the 942.140. So you can see this has reverted to its original state. If we take a look at our exclusions, you can see our custom exclusions. The exclusion at the rule level has gone. We now only have the global exclusion. So this has been retained. So that means we've lost our customizations. In terms of our policy settings, you'll note that they're the same in terms of our custom rules and also in terms of our sensitive data that we had configured. Those values still remain the same. So in the event that you do want to upgrade your WAF rule set, and of course you've gone through the steps, you've documented it, you've done the backup, what you can do, you can go ahead, do the upgrade in a non-production environment, in a test environment. And this is where you do not, like I mentioned, you do not have the purpose for those customizations. You're able to do it within the portal. However, now in the second scenario, whereby you do not want to lose your exclusions, do not want to lose the actions, specific actions that you had made for your managed rules, this is where you now use the template method. Like you had seen, I had already exported my template, so that's on my backup. And if I go to where I had put it, this is the original one where I have the CRS 3.2. You can see this describes what we had done. For example, you can see here my exclusions. This is at the global level, and we also have the exclusion that are done on the specific rule. And the same applies for the actions that are done for the rule set. So you can see here we had DS challenge for bot manager, and we also had a change of action to log for this particular rule. So in the real world scenario, because this is for demo purposes, we would expect to see more of this. So in the event that you want to still retain these customizations, what can you do? So the first step, we've downloaded our template. We have it as a backup. The second step now is to duplicate that particular template and to actually change some values, which we'll see. So the first one is, because we are using a new rule set, we no longer have the CRS 3.2. We need to change the rule set type to the Microsoft default rule set. We also need to change the rule set version to the new one. And also extremely important, we need to change the rule group name. So if I can go back to my previous template, scroll back to the specific section, this is what I am referring to. So this is the difference that comes into play. For here, rule set type, we have OWASP for the version 3.2, and then for the rule group name, we have this particular one, if I'm to use this example. So this is extremely important to take note of, and this information is available in our official documentation. So if you're moving from a particular rule set version to another, it's always extremely important to make sure that you have the new rule group name that you're going to use for your new rule set that you want to go into. The same also applies for exclusions. For example, for OWASP 3.2, this is called request 920 protocol enforcement. When we go to our new DRS and we check in the documentation, we'll see it's only called protocol enforcement and not the entire full name that we saw. So this is extremely important to take note of. In addition to that, since we're also in a new bot manager rule set, we've changed the rule set version to 1.1. So those are the changes that you need to make on that particular template. And this is also very well documented in the blog that we had shown in the presentation. So now I've made changes to my new rule set, and I now want to apply it. I need to double check, so it's also important to review this. Like we mentioned, make sure that your changes align. Double check within the documentation that you have the correct rule set type, the rule group name, that they all align. Make sure that for example, for your exclusions, also for your rules, that rule actually exists for. So for example, make sure that this rule for protocol enforcement 920-100 exists within the new rule set. So once we have verified all that, the next step is actually to upload this template so that we can reapply or we can put back our customizations. So to do so, I'll go back to the portal. I'm going to do this through the automation to the export template page. I'll just let this run for a few so they can generate the template, then I'm able to deploy it. You can also be able to do this through the deploy template within the Azure portal. So just let it run, and once it's ready, I'm going to go ahead and deploy the template 2.1 that I've made the changes on. So this is done. What I'm going to do, I'm going to click on deploy. Then I'm going to edit my template. I'm going to load the file that I changed, and this is on DRS 2.1. So I'm going to open that. Before I deploy, just make sure that the changes I've made are here. So I'll go again down. I'm on Microsoft Default Ruleset 2.1. I've changed the rule group name. So this is on the Managed Rulesets. For my bot manager, I'm now on 1.1. I have the action as JS challenge, so that's what we want to restore. Then for my exclusions, particularly for the one I'd made on a particular rule, protocol enforcement, I can see it's down here and exclusion. So I'm going to save this. Make sure I'm deploying it to the correct resource group, the region. I'm going to go next. So you're going to do some validation. And also just to note, in the event that there are some errors, like for example, if you misspelled something, you will see an error once this starts the creation process, because that rule, if it's the rule group name, the rule set version, if it doesn't exist, it's not going to be accepted. So next I'm going to create. Then we're going to cross our fingers and see if this is going to go through, if we have done it correctly. It's submitting the request. This should take a few moments for it to complete. You can see our deployment is in progress. Like I mentioned, if there's an error, it will appear here. So that's why the review, the documentation becomes extremely important. So our deployment is complete. I'm going to go to the resource, take me to my resource group. Then I'm going to go to that particular WAF policy. Going to first check on my managed rules. This is where we had our customizations. So let me expand this. You can see on our bot manager rule set, now we have JavaScript challenge. For the other bots, this is a customization we had made on the rule action. Then I'd also made a change to one of my rules. This is 942.140. We now have log. So our template has applied for that. For the exclusions, you can now see that my specific exclusion has now been added. So this is how we make sure that we don't lose our customizations. So with the template method, you're able to restore. You're also able to ensure that you don't lose any changes. On the global level, if you're doing this upgrade at the global level and there are no changes to be made, you can use the portal method. So that's something important to take note of. So with that, I'll come to the end of this demo. I hope you found this informative, and we look forward to you using this method, using the tips that we have given you. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason to finish this session.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. The team's been great with answering questions. We do have a few that are worth reiterating. The first one is, how do we support mobile applications from attacks? Does mobile dev team need to add any SDKs?
Okay, so from our perspective, we're able to protect the APIs and the web services that the mobile applications rely on. So we'll be able to protect them from the common attacks, vulnerabilities. Also to note, since WAF runs on the application gateway or front door, and that's at the edge, in most cases, you don't need to change or modify the SDK. So as long as you've configured your application gateway, your WAF correctly to point to the backend API or a web service that mobile application relies on, you are able to protect it.
Great, thank you. The next question is, can you update rule sets using bicep or ARM?
Yes, you are able to do that. So in our case, you saw we used JSON. So you're also able to use bicep, you're also able to use ARM, JSON, infrastructure as code methods. Just make sure to ensure that you have the correct rule group names, the correct rule set version, that you also saw that I use. So you're also able to use other versions, and this comes other methods, and this comes in handy, of course. We know whereby if you have very large environments, there's continuous automation. This will be extremely useful when it comes to doing it at scale.
Great, thank you. The next question is, do the WAFs handle IPv4 and v6 in the same way?
Yes, so currently we have IPv6 support in Azure Front WAF, and it does handle it the same way. So we actually have a great blog on that. Maybe we can also share it later. So for FD WAF, IPv6 support that is possible. For App Gateway with WAF, the current support is with IPv4, but they are handled the same. So if you're using FD WAF and you have IPv6, you're able to use those IPv6 addresses and also be able to see their logging within the logs if you've enabled logging for it.
Great, thank you. The last question is, how are these rule sets evaluated? Is it by order?
So the rule sets, they are evaluated in order. So the first one they'll be evaluated in order is the custom rule sets. Then they'll be followed by the managed rule set. So in the managed rule set, you'll have your default rule set and then your bot manager rule set. So there is indeed an order in which they are evaluated, starting with the custom, then going to the managed.
Great. That seems to be all the questions we have. So with that, I'd like to thank you, Andrew and Gustavo, for being our guests and for sharing the great information with our community. Also, thank you to the Q&A team who helped us with answering the questions and providing the resourceful information. To all the listeners still on the line, if you're someone who wishes to aid in the protection of the world from cyber threats and desire to have a say in shaping our strategies, blueprints, and recommendations, then we invite you to become part of our security community. Together, we can make a global impact. So join us at aka.ms/securitycommunity. This is also where you'll be notified about the upcoming webinars, events, and other announcements. For those of you who may have additional questions on the topic we just covered or other product-related questions, please feel free to raise them on our Microsoft Tech Community discussion space at aka.ms/anscommunity. Thank you all for being part of our community, for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.